Stop making your morning tea the same way you have been making it for the last 40 years. Not because tea is wrong. Tea is not wrong. Tea may be one of the most powerful things a person over 60 can drink, but most people over 60 are using the wrong leaf. They are steeping the wrong plant. And every single morning, while they believe they are doing something good for their body, they are leaving the most important medicine in the world sitting right there in their kitchen or at their local grocery store, completely untouched. There is one leaf, and in this video there are actually 5 of them, ranked from powerful to extraordinary, that when dropped into hot water and allowed to steep for just a few minutes, begins doing something inside the arteries, the eyes, and the joints that no cup of ordinary black tea can match. Something that researchers have been quietly publishing studies about for decades. Something that the people who are supposed to guide you through the complexities of aging almost never have time to mention. This is not about some exotic, unpronounceable root that can only be ordered online. These leaves are real. They are accessible. Most of them have been sitting in kitchens or at farmers' markets this whole time. And the one at number 1, the leaf that works on all 3 simultaneously, the arteries, the eyes, and the joints, through a mechanism that researchers have described as one of the most powerful plant compounds ever identified. Fewer than 3 in 100 people over 60 have ever used it intentionally. Stay with this all the way through. Because the order matters. Each leaf builds on the last. And by the end, there is a very specific, very simple daily practice. No pills, no prescriptions, no expense. That takes less than 5 minutes and addresses 3 of the biggest threats to independence and vitality after 60. Before going any further, type your age in the comments below right now. Just your age. Nothing else. Because what follows is more important the older you are, and it helps to understand who is paying attention. Now, here is what nobody tells you, and this is the part that changes everything. When a doctor says that arteries are stiffening, that cholesterol is building up, that joints are inflamed, that vision is declining, the word that almost never gets spoken out loud, the word that connects all 4 of those things is inflammation. Chronic, low-level, silent inflammation. The kind that has no fever, no obvious pain signal, no alarm. It simply burns. Slowly. Quietly. Year after year after year inside the blood vessel walls. Inside the joint cartilage. Inside the fragile cells at the back of the eye. Here's the part that most people have never heard explained clearly. That inflammation is not caused primarily by what was eaten last week. It is not primarily caused by a single bad habit. After 60, chronic inflammation is driven by something called oxidative stress, a biological process in which the body produces more damaging molecules called free radicals than it can neutralize with its own internal defense systems. Think of oxidative stress like rust. On a car, rust is what happens when iron is exposed to oxygen and moisture over time. The metal doesn't break all at once. It corrodes, slowly, invisibly, until one day the door falls off. That is what oxidative stress does to the tissues of the aging body. It corrodes the lining of blood vessels until they stiffen and narrow. It corrodes the cartilage in knees and hips until movement becomes painful. It corrodes the photoreceptors at the back of the eye until vision blurs and dims. And here is the reframe that changes the entire conversation. You have been told that these conditions, stiff arteries, joint pain, blurring vision, are separate problems requiring separate solutions. A medication for blood pressure, a medication for cholesterol, a different medication for the joints, maybe glasses, maybe surgery eventually. Each problem treated in its own isolated box. But they are not separate problems. They are 3 expressions of the same underlying fire. And a plant that extinguishes that fire at the source, at the level of the oxidative and inflammatory pathway, addresses all 3 at once. Not because it is magic, because the biology is connected. The biology has always been connected. And the most powerful way to address it is not 3 separate interventions, but one that gets to the root. This is not a fringe idea. The National Institutes of Health and peer-reviewed journals, including the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, Nutrients, and Phytomedicine, have all published research on plant polyphenols, the compounds found in specific leaves, and their ability to reduce the markers of systemic inflammation, improve arterial elasticity, protect visual cells from oxidative damage, and reduce joint inflammation. This research exists. It is findable. It is real. Now here's what it actually means for a person over 60 sitting in their kitchen every morning. Because here is the truth about aging that no one says plainly enough. After 60, the body's own antioxidant production declines. Superoxide dismutase, catalase, glutathione. These are the body's internal rust fighters. They were abundant at 25. They are significantly diminished at 65, which means the body becomes increasingly dependent on external antioxidant sources, food, and in particular plant compounds, to compensate for what it can no longer make enough of on its own. This is not a failure. This is physiology. This is what aging looks like at the molecular level. And it means that what is dropped into a cup of hot water every morning is more important after 60 than it has ever been before. So, now here are the 5 leaves, ranked from beneficial to genuinely extraordinary. Each one targets a specific piece of the same inflammatory puzzle: arteries, eyes, and joints, through a different mechanism. And number 1 does all 3 simultaneously, through a pathway so powerful that researchers studying it have compared it to some of the most well-studied anti-inflammatory compounds on Earth. Number 5 is the leaf that most people have in their kitchen right now, on a shelf, used only for cooking, and almost never for drinking. It is the bay leaf, and what it does to cholesterol and blood sugar in just 30 days has been published in a peer-reviewed clinical trial. Here is the mechanism. Bay leaves contain compounds called linalool, eugenol, and catechins. These are plant polyphenols with documented anti-inflammatory and lipid-lowering effects. In the arteries, elevated LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad cholesterol, is not simply a plumbing problem. It is an inflammatory problem. LDL particles become dangerous primarily when they are oxidized, when free radicals damage them and transform them into the kind of particles that embed themselves in artery walls and trigger the immune response that builds plaque. The compounds in bay leaves interrupt this process. They act as a shield around the LDL molecule, reducing the oxidative damage that makes it dangerous. Think of bay leaf compounds as a protective coat over every cholesterol particle in the bloodstream. Without the coat, the particle is vulnerable. With it, it passes through the artery harmlessly. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Clinical Biochemistry and Nutrition studied the effects of 1 to 3 grams of dried bay leaf consumed daily for 30 days in people with type 2 diabetes. By the end of the trial, total cholesterol had decreased significantly. LDL, the harmful kind, was reduced. HDL, the protective kind, had increased. Triglycerides had fallen. Fasting blood glucose was lower. All of this from a leaf that most people use exclusively to flavor soup and then discard. Consider someone like a retired postal worker from Nashville, a man in his early 70s who had been watching his cholesterol numbers climb for 3 years despite reducing butter and red meat. His wife had read about bay leaf tea and suggested he try it for a month before his next blood test. He was doubtful. He had been told for years that cholesterol required medication, but he tried it. 2 small dried bay leaves steeped in hot water each morning for 30 days. At his next appointment, his doctor noted that his LDL had dropped meaningfully and asked what had changed. He said, "Just my tea." How to do it exactly? Take 2 to 3 dried bay leaves, the same ones used for cooking, and place them in 8 to 10 ounces of just boiled water. Not simmering, just boiled and then removed from the heat. Steep for 10 to 12 minutes. Remove the leaves and drink the tea warm, first thing in the morning before breakfast. The taste is mild, slightly herbal, not unpleasant. 1 cup per day is sufficient. Do not boil the leaves in the water. This can degrade some of the more delicate polyphenolic compounds. But bay leaf primarily addresses the arteries and blood sugar. The next leaf goes further. It addresses the joint specifically, through one of the most well-studied anti-inflammatory mechanisms in modern botanical research. Number 4 is nettle leaf, stinging nettle, and what it does to the inflammatory pathways driving joint pain in people over 60 has been studied in human trials with documented results. Here is the mechanism. Joint pain after 60, whether it is labeled osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, or simply chronic joint inflammation, is driven at the cellular level by a protein complex called NF-kappa B. This complex acts like a volume dial for inflammation. When NF-kappa B is switched on, the joint cells produce inflammatory signaling molecules called cytokines. Those cytokines attract immune cells. Those immune cells attack the joint tissue. Cartilage erodes. Synovial fluid thins. The joint becomes painful, stiff, and swollen. Think of NF-kappa B as the master alarm switch in a building. When it fires, every siren in the building goes off simultaneously. The immune system floods in like firefighters responding to a full emergency, even when the fire is just a spark. Nettle leaf compounds, particularly a compound called caffeic acid and the flavonoid quercetin, have been shown in research to directly inhibit NF-kappa B signaling. They reach into the alarm panel and turn the volume down. The inflammatory response decreases. The cytokines reduce. The joint begins to recover. A research review published in the journal Phytomedicine analyzing multiple studies on stinging nettle compounds found that nettle extract significantly reduced levels of inflammatory cytokines associated with both osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. One clinical observation found that applying nettle leaf to painful joints reduced the reliance on non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, common NSAIDs like ibuprofen, by measurably significant amounts. For people whose kidneys and stomachs are already sensitive to those medications, that reduction in reliance is not a minor thing. It is meaningful protection for other organs. Think of someone like a retired school principal from Portland, Oregon, a woman in her late 60s who had been waking up every morning with stiff, aching knees for 4 years. She had been told it was simply the progression of osteoarthritis. She had tried glucosamine supplements without notable improvement. Her pharmacist almost offhandedly mentioned nettle leaf tea. She was skeptical. It sounded more like a home remedy than a real intervention. She tried it for 6 weeks. By the end of the 2nd week, the morning stiffness had decreased enough that she noticed it. By the end of the 6th week, she could walk her morning mile without stopping to rest. She told her pharmacist, "I thought I was just going to have to live with it." How to do it exactly? Use 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried nettle leaf, available at health food stores and most herbal tea suppliers, steeped in 8 ounces of hot water, just off the boil, for 10 minutes. Strain through a fine mesh strainer. Drink 1 cup in the morning and optionally a 2nd cup in the afternoon. The taste is mild and grassy. It can be combined with a small amount of honey without diminishing its effects. If fresh nettles are available, handle them with gloves. The fresh leaf stings the skin, but the sting is entirely neutralized by heat. But nettle works on joints primarily through the inflammatory pathway. The next leaf turns its attention to something that declines quietly and invisibly after 60, something that most people don't even notice changing until the damage is already significant. The eyes. Number 3 is hibiscus, and the connection between hibiscus and vision health, through the circulatory system that feeds the eye, is one of the most underappreciated links in all of senior health research. Here is the mechanism. The retina, the thin layer of light-sensitive tissue at the back of the eye, is one of the most metabolically active tissues in the entire human body. It consumes more oxygen per gram of tissue than almost any other organ. To do this, it depends on a dense network of tiny blood vessels called the choroidal circulation and the retinal vasculature. When those vessels are healthy and elastic, the retina is richly supplied. When they become stiffened, narrowed, or damaged by elevated blood pressure and oxidative stress, which is exactly what happens progressively after 60, the retina begins to suffer. Cells die. Vision deteriorates. Age-related macular degeneration begins. This is the link that most people miss completely. Macular degeneration, the leading cause of irreversible vision loss in people over 60 in the United States, is fundamentally a vascular and oxidative disease. It is not simply the eye wearing out. It is the blood supply to the eye becoming inadequate. And the same arterial inflammation and oxidative damage that stiffens the large arteries also silently damages the microscopic vessels that feed the retina. Hibiscus, specifically the compounds anthocyanins and flavonoids found in hibiscus, work on both sides of this problem simultaneously. On the vascular side, hibiscus anthocyanins have been shown in clinical trials to meaningfully reduce systolic and diastolic blood pressure, which directly relieves the pressure stress on retinal blood vessels. On the oxidative side, the anthocyanins in hibiscus are among the most powerful free radical neutralizing compounds identified in any plant studied. They act like a specialized cleaning crew inside the blood vessels feeding the eye, neutralizing the oxidative particles that would otherwise damage the vessel lining and the photoreceptors beyond it. Think of the retinal blood vessels as a garden irrigation system. When the water pressure is too high and the pipes are corroded, the delicate roots, the photoreceptor cells, are starved or flooded. Hibiscus compounds regulate the pressure and repair the pipelining simultaneously. A systematic review and meta-analysis published in the journal Nutrition Reviews, analyzing multiple clinical trials, found that hibiscus supplementation reduced total cholesterol by 8 to 14% in participants, and separate trials have demonstrated significant reductions in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. One trial showed reductions in systolic pressure comparable to low-dose antihypertensive medication. For the fragile blood vessels feeding the retina, that pressure reduction is not a cosmetic number. It is structural protection for the cells that make sight possible. Consider someone like a retired accountant from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a woman in her early 70s whose eye doctor had warned her at her last exam that early drusen deposits, the precursors of macular degeneration, had appeared in both eyes. She was told to monitor it. She went home feeling frightened and helpless. Her neighbor, who grew hibiscus in her garden, suggested she try steeping the dried flowers as a daily tea. She began drinking 2 cups a day. 6 months later, at her follow-up appointment, her ophthalmologist noted that her blood pressure readings, taken at the start of every eye exam, had dropped from 148/90 to 127/81. "Whatever you're doing," the doctor said, "keep doing it." The drusen had not worsened. How to do it exactly? Use 2 to 3 teaspoons of dried hibiscus petals, also labeled hibiscus sabdarifa, or simply sold as hibiscus herbal tea, steeped in 8 to 10 ounces of hot water for 5 to 7 minutes. The tea brews a deep crimson color. It has a tart, cranberry-like taste. Do not add sugar. Use a small amount of raw honey if sweetness is preferred. Drink 1 to 2 cups per day. Can be prepared warm or cooled and drunk as a cold infusion throughout the day. Both preparations retain the active compounds. Now pause here for just a moment and hit the like button on this video, not as a favor, but because what comes next, number 2 and especially number 1, is the information that the people who most need it will only find if this video reaches them. The algorithm responds to engagement. The like takes 1 second, and the person who needs number 1 may be someone in the family or a neighbor down the street. Type "I'm ready" in the comments right now and keep watching. Number 2 is a leaf that has been called the most nutrient-dense plant ever studied, and it does something remarkable for the arteries, the eyes, and the joints simultaneously, not through a single compound, but through a combination of compounds so dense that researchers have given it a name, the miracle tree. The leaf is Moringa oleifera, and the breadth of what it delivers in a single cup of steeped hot water is unlike anything else in this list. Here is the mechanism. Moringa leaves contain over 90 documented nutrients, including 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, 4 times the calcium of milk, 3 times the potassium of bananas, and, critically for this audience, significant concentrations of zeaxanthin and lutein. These are the 2 carotenoids that accumulate in the macula of the human eye and act as a biological filter against high-energy light waves. They are the macula's own built-in sunscreen. When zeaxanthin and lutein levels are adequate, the macula is protected from the oxidative damage of sunlight and blue light. When they are depleted, which happens naturally with age, the macula becomes vulnerable. Age-related macular degeneration begins. Moringa is one of the richest plant sources of these 2 compounds available anywhere. But moringa doesn't stop at the eyes. The anti-inflammatory compounds in moringa leaves, specifically isothiocyanates, quercetin, and chlorogenic acid, work at the same NF-kappa B pathway that makes nettles so effective for joints. Multiple animal studies published in peer-reviewed journals have shown that moringa extract significantly reduces markers of joint inflammation and oxidative stress, including in models of rheumatoid arthritis. Research published in the journal Asian Pacific Journal of Cancer Prevention found that moringa leaf extract demonstrated potent anti-inflammatory activity, reducing inflammatory markers by measurable amounts across multiple tissue types. For the arteries, moringa's combination of potassium, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory compounds addresses all 3 layers of arterial aging simultaneously. It helps regulate blood pressure through its mineral content, reduces the oxidative damage to artery walls through its polyphenols, and lowers the chronic inflammatory burden through its isothiocyanates. Think of moringa as a maintenance crew for 3 separate buildings: the eye, the joint, and the artery wall, all working simultaneously with a single morning investment. Think of the antioxidants in moringa like a specialized security team stationed throughout the body simultaneously. One unit is at the artery wall, neutralizing oxidized LDL before it can embed. Another unit is in the joint tissue, calming the inflammatory signals that erode cartilage. And a third unit is at the back of the eye, filtering out the light wavelengths that would otherwise damage the photoreceptors. All of this from the same leaf, at the same time. Consider someone like a retired nurse from Charlotte, North Carolina. A woman in her early 70s who had spent decades caring for other people's health while quietly ignoring certain warning signs in her own. Her knees ached. Her last eye exam had flagged early changes in her macula. Her cardiologist had mentioned that her arterial stiffness index was elevated for her age. She knew enough about biology to be concerned. She also knew enough to be skeptical of quick fixes. But moringa was something she had read about in nursing literature years earlier and never revisited. She began making moringa leaf tea every morning for 8 weeks. She also stirred a small amount of the dried leaf powder into warm water on the mornings when loose leaf wasn't available. By the end of the 8 weeks, she noticed she was climbing the stairs without stopping to catch her breath. Her knee pain at the end of a walking day had diminished. At her next ophthalmology appointment, she asked her doctor about lutein and zeaxanthin levels and the protective role of carotenoids. The doctor told her she was already doing everything right. How to do it exactly? Use 1 teaspoon of dried moringa leaf, sold as loose leaf tea, powder, or packaged herbal tea bags, steeped in 8 ounces of hot water just off the boil for 5 to 7 minutes. Do not use boiling water poured directly onto moringa. Temperatures above 212 degrees Fahrenheit can degrade heat-sensitive nutrients. Let the water cool for 30 seconds after boiling, then pour. Steep 5 to 7 minutes, then strain. Can be combined with lemon juice, which enhances the absorption of several of moringa's iron and antioxidant compounds. 1 cup in the morning is sufficient. The taste is mildly earthy, similar to a gentle green tea. And this brings everything to number 1. The leaf that, of everything on this list, has the most concentrated, most studied, most clinically validated effect on all 3 targets simultaneously: arteries, eyes, and joints, through a single master compound that researchers have compared in potency and breadth of action to some of the most powerful known anti-inflammatory agents. The leaf is the olive leaf, and the compound it contains is called oleuropein. And it is extraordinary. Here is the mechanism. Oleuropein is a saccharidoid, a type of polyphenol found almost exclusively in the olive plant, and concentrated most densely, not in olive oil, but in the raw, dried leaf itself. Olive oil contains trace amounts of oleuropein because most is lost during pressing. The leaf retains it in full, and what oleuropein does inside the human body has been documented in peer-reviewed clinical trials across multiple countries over multiple decades. For the arteries, and this is where the research is most robust, oleuropein has been shown to have a direct effect on arterial elasticity. It does this through 2 mechanisms simultaneously. First, it inhibits the enzyme ACE, angiotensin-converting enzyme, the same enzyme that some of the most commonly prescribed blood pressure medications target. By inhibiting this enzyme, oleuropein allows blood vessels to relax and dilate, reducing the pressure against artery walls. Second, it inhibits the oxidation of LDL cholesterol, the process that turns normal cholesterol into the dangerous plaque-forming variety. Think of oleuropein as a compound that both opens the pipe and keeps the pipe clean at the same time. A meta-analysis published in the journal Nutrients, consolidating data from multiple randomized controlled trials, found that olive leaf extract significantly reduced systolic blood pressure, in some analyses by as much as 6 millimeters of mercury compared to placebo, in participants with elevated blood pressure. A separate randomized controlled trial published in the European Journal of Nutrition directly compared olive leaf extract to a commonly used calcium channel blocker medication for blood pressure management. The results were comparable. The olive leaf performed equivalently in terms of blood pressure reduction, without the side effects. For the joints, oleuropein's anti-inflammatory action operates through the same NF-kappa B pathway targeted by nettle, but with an additional mechanism. Oleuropein also inhibits an enzyme called cyclooxygenase 2, or COX2. This is the same enzyme targeted by prescription anti-inflammatory medications like celecoxib. COX2 drives the prostaglandin production that causes joint pain and swelling. By inhibiting COX2 naturally, oleuropein delivers joint pain relief through the same biological door as pharmaceutical intervention, but through a plant compound consumed in a cup of tea. Think of COX-2 as a pump that keeps pain signals flowing into the joint. Pharmaceutical COX-2 inhibitors put a valve on that pump. They reduce the flow. Oleuropein does the same thing. Not as dramatically, not overnight, but consistently, day after day, with no gastric risk, no kidney burden, no interaction with blood pressure medications. For the eyes, the pathway is both direct and indirect. Directly, oleuropein's extraordinarily high antioxidant activity. Olive leaf extract has been demonstrated to have approximately double the antioxidant capacity of green tea, one of the most celebrated antioxidants in the world. Protects retinal cells from oxidative damage. Indirectly, the blood pressure reduction it achieves protects the fragile vasculature feeding the retina. Research published in the journal Applied Sciences documented that olive leaf polyphenols, including oleuropein, demonstrated protective effects on retinal cells exposed to oxidative stress in laboratory conditions. A study published in PMC from the NIH, a comprehensive review titled Prophylactic Olive Leaf Tea as a Nutraceutical Strategy, concluded that olive leaf tea, as a significant source of phenolics including oleuropein and hydroxytyrosol, exhibits robust antioxidant activity and protective advantages in multiple chronic disease conditions, including cardiovascular disease and inflammatory conditions. That study was published not in an alternative medicine journal. It was published in a peer-reviewed scientific literature platform indexed by the National Institutes of Health. The body is not past saving. The body is asking for something specific. Now there is a name for what it needs. Take care of the body. It is the only home there is.